Today's lesson will be about remote connection to the virtual machine server we created in the last lesson. I'm going to go through two methods to do this. One of them should work in all versions of Windows, and the other one, SSH, should work in Windows 10, as I believe Microsoft most recently added this feature. So let's talk about what a remote connection is. It's basically the command line. To get ready for this lesson today, I've already opened up and launched the virtual machine we created in the last lesson. Go in and log into this thing here, and I'll show you the advantage. So imagine for a moment that this window isn't actually a window in Windows. It's what's shown on a screen at like an actual monitor connected to a server. Back in the day, that's basically what this would have been. You would sit down at either a terminal connected directly to a server, or you would sit down at the server itself, keyboard and a screen. So as things progressed, people wanted to be able to sit at their personal computer and log into a server. So I'll show you the main difference between just working in this window and working in a remote connection. So I'm just trying to fill the screen here with a bunch of information, just listing files and stuff. You notice here that this doesn't scroll. There's no scroll wheel. I can't go back to what was previously printed out in the remote login. I'm sure there's some easy, interesting ways to do this with a bunch of Unix script foo magic and everything, but for the purposes of this demonstration and this terminal window, you can't do that. So that's one advantage of logging in remotely, is you'll have a way to do that and go back. Today I want to talk about what the command line is. So we'll just start with the basics. You just saw me use the ls script on the prompt here. Change directory, copy, and move. ls, cd, cp, and mv. All very basics. I'll go over these real quick, just in this server window. Yeah, thanks, Windows. Alright, so you saw me use ls. That just lists all the files in a directory, and there's a couple of different ways to make it print out. And maybe I'm forgetting some of them. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Let's talk about finding out where you are. PWD stands for Print Working Directory, and that will give you the path to where you are. In my efforts to fill up this window earlier, I changed the directory back to the root directory, which is like, if you want a Windows analogy, it's like C:, the base root directory. In Unix, it's just this slash right here. I can't really point to it with a mouse. So that cd tilde that I just entered, that moves me back to my home directory. That's where my user lives on the server. And we'll do a print working directory on that, and we'll see the path to my home file. That's /home/btech. And right now, I don't have any files in there. There's a couple of hidden files, actually, which is some cool stuff I'll talk about in a future video. But today we're just talking about connecting to this remote server and just doing some basic stuff. So right now, that was print working directory. And then ls will list all non-hidden files. And then, like you just saw me do, ls-la will print everything, including the dot and the dot, which are just strange shortcuts to get back to the previous folder. Um, but we see all those hidden files here. It's funny, I'm pointing to my screen right now, and I know nobody can see it, but these hidden files manage how you interact with this shell interface here. And you can do some pretty cool stuff with them, which hopefully I'll be able to cover in the future. Next on the list after ls is make directory, mkdir, and then we're just going to give it a name. I'm going to give it test. You can provide a fully qualified path here, so I'm still in my home directory, as demonstrated by that. And I just created that test directory, which is listed right there. So if I want to make a directory inside a test directory, I can enter something like this, and it will create that inside of the test directory. So to move inside that test directory, we use the cd command for change directory. And now in the prompt here, I'll kind of try to point to it right there, we have that tilde, a slash, and then the name of the folder that we're in. And I just listed the contents of it so we can see test2. Let me get back here. So here's our current working directory. And we can go backwards by doing cd ... That will take us back one step in the hierarchy of the path that we're in currently. So getting off on a little bit of tangent here. Just create a test file real quick. I just touched it. That just basically means designate this file name. But for the purposes of demonstrating copy, so right now there's this test folder and there's this test.txt file in my home directory. And say I want to make another copy of it, I can do test.txt and then give it a new name, test2.txt. And now if I list, we have two copies of the same file. There isn't anything in that file right now because I just touched it, but if it were like a, say, the lesson plan for today, I would have a new copy of it. And to go along with copy, there's move, which is just mv. So say I want to move that test2 file to the test folder. I'm going to enter something like this. Now if I do a list on my current directory, test2 is gone. And I can also do a remote list of the test folder. I really wish that stopped popping up. And I'll see in the test folder, even though I'm still in my home directory, I'll list the contents of the test. I can see the test2 folder and the test2.txt file. So those are the very, very basic commands of getting around inside of this Linux operating system on the server side at the command prompt. This is by no means exhaustive and does not demonstrate the power of Unix at all. But kind of covered some of the basics here. For the higher level stuff, there are a lot of tools out there that many talented programmers have created for the command line. They're really hard to list all of them, but it's pretty amazing if you need to do like some sort of complex file transformation or anything like that. The skill of some of the administrators out there is amazing in what they can automate on the most basic levels of this scripting system. And this whole shell, the shell that comes installed with this one, which is the interface that we're using in this, is called bash. And there's many other shells out there. They're all different in how they work and operate and the things that you can do with them, but bash is the most basic one, so I'm going to use that for future lessons until there's a need for something else. So you can execute complex functions. Say you had a file directory full of images and they're all named in some sort of date form, like image 2018 0701. So that's the day I'm making it. And you only wanted to copy the images from July, say, and you wanted to put them into a July folder. You could copy all the images that include just this bit of text, and that's very easy to do. I'll try to demonstrate that in a little bit, but it's just one example. You can do complex file searches and everything in between. There's also a number of services that are only offered to interface with them through a command line, and those are mostly like web applications and the stuff that I really want to get to in future lessons. So that's why I feel like this is a very important basis to get started with. You got to be comfortable maneuvering the command line and using the different tools so you can start working with these higher level services of, running a web page, running a web server, I should say, and all the other cool stuff that goes along with it. And obviously, you can use this to monitor services. In my old setup that I had when I had my business, I had one monitor entirely dedicated to monitoring logs coming off the servers and stuff that I was running. Some people find that useful. Some people are just freaks and want to know what's happening on their computers every second of the day. So, something to take into consideration rather. Alright, so moving on here. There's two ways to connect from Windows to a remote server, such as the virtual machine that we have set up. Let's go through the basics. Right now, PuTTY is the way most Windows users connect to Linux servers, such as the one that we have set up here. Show you. Here, let me log out of this and I'll log back in because there's something useful right at the login. Right at our login, not that I can point to it directly, but you see this right here. It says IP address for ENS, blah blah blah, 192.168.119.129. Go away. So download and install PuTTY. I'd say do that real quick, pause the video. It's pretty small. This is a great free open source application written by this guy, Simon Tatham, and it just a pretty easy way to just get connected. So let's bring that back up here. After you download and install PuTTY here, you can just open up the application and you'll see this. And then we can type in this IP address. This is the network address for our virtual machine that we created before. And I'm just going to give this a name and save it so I don't have to keep typing this in. And we'll click open. So it wants us to log in here, and this is just going to be our same username and password that we set up the server with. And voila, we are in. As you can see, I have all the same files, and I can actually kind of mess around with this now. There's a scroll bar, I can highlight text, I can work with it a lot easier than this server on this side. So I'm going to minimize that, and we'll work with this in the future here. So this is one option. This is just a standalone application that that Simon guy wrote. The other option is in Windows 10, Microsoft finally integrated SSH. And we can do the same by opening up the command line, as you saw me do there. Just hit this, typed in CMD. It's a command prompt. And then we're going to execute the command SSH. And then we're going to punch in our username, then an @ symbol, the address of our, if I can type here, the address of our virtual machine, and hit enter. Now this is a pretty standard thing. I think PuTTY will ask you a very similar question the first time you try to connect. I tested it before I started recording the video, so you didn't see that pop up. All you gotta do is enter yes, and it saves this fingerprint, and then enter your password, and you're in. So for all the purposes of this video moving forward, I'm just going to use this because it's built in and it works right now. Again, we get all the same kind of interactions with it. You just don't need this extra program, PuTTY. But as it stands, you should be able to do everything in either one of these interchangeably. So if you don't have Windows 10, you can definitely use PuTTY. And if you do, you can just SSH in like normal. Yeah. And generally you want to exit. That's how you log out. Alright, so that's the basis of our lesson today. If I didn't mention, SSH stands for Secure Shell. This is kind of the sequel to RSH, which was not a secure connection. This one uses full encryption on the connection so nobody can spy on it. If there's any fans of the old days, I don't know why you'd be watching this channel if you were, but it used to be a lot easier to hack computers than it is now, and due in part mostly to this encryption. So it's a good idea to use SSH. As part of a future lesson, I'll try to whip up something to show how to make SSHing into several machines a lot easier. If we had another virtual machine set up here in VMware, we could see how you could SSH from one server to another. It's pretty commonplace when you're administering servers. You got some files or source files or something on a development server, and you need to get them moved over to the production server. You can log in and secure copy them over. You can SSH from one machine into another, and you can, the reason I most often did that is I was logging in from home, so there was a gateway server that we would SSH into. That'd be one server into another. I can kind of depict this if I try here. So, where's all the shapes? Here we go. We do one computer into another. So this would be like home, and this would be a gateway system. And then from there, we'd log into whatever server we were trying to work on. So it was kind of a multi-step process, but this gateway here is what fenced off the outside, the internet kind of thing, to all the servers that we had inside. So you couldn't directly go from one computer on the outside to inside. You had to instead go through the gateway and then further jump to all the servers on the inside, which there were several of. And just to kind of expound that point, something along these lines. So that's my short and sweet lesson for today. If you're just pulling this up because you found the video on YouTube or something and you don't know what a virtual machine is, You can check that out on a previous lesson in this channel. So thank you.